What's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another player interview. This time we're here with Justin Rosenberg. So Justin, what event did you play in this weekend? How did you do?
This weekend I did the Otakon Nationals qualifier, and I got top 4.
Awesome, playing Shenron Gogeta. So what made you want to play this deck? Now, I think it's one of the strongest decks in the format, even post ban list, even though like battering laser's gone and things like that. But what made you want to play this deck?
Just like you said, I think it's still one of the best decks in the format, especially after seeing the strength from the ARG Invitational and it showing. Me and my team, currently been working with Skillless for a while since Set 6 release. And after taking it to Richmond, it just didn't feel strong enough to me. So I went with something that I knew could really, go into the meta, see what my bad matchups were, and be able to tech for them, as well as take on all the other matchups and know that I have a pretty strong advantage if I can see my objections and get to turn 5 easily.
Nice. And so I'm kind of curious, what did you find to be your bad matchups for this deck?
So going into it, the matchups I wasn't very confident were Toa, just because I haven't tested around it and I know the leader skill kind of shuts down Gogeta a bit. And also the Victory Strike, because I know it's also any format other than Broly, just because they don't attack me. So if there's current pieces in my life that I need, or if there's anything like that, if I don't see my pieces, it just kind of gets down to a dice roll. Mm-hmm. So those matchups that are 50-50, I wouldn't necessarily call them good matchups on my end.
That's a fair point. So we'll get into the deck list then, kind of talk about some of the interesting stuff. So 7 regular Dragon Balls, no Super Dragon Ball, which has been pretty popular lately. So how come no Super Dragon Ball?
I went straight consistency, especially since I know the DC, Maryland, Virginia area likes to go a little more aggro with their mono black decks and their skillless. So I wanted to make sure that I can safely play my Dragon Balls without tapping out, except if I needed to tap out turn 1 for a Crisis Crusher, or I'd rather just see 2 cards on turn 1 and 2 with my my Dragon Radars and still be able to objection on turn 2. Also, the ability to potentially awaken on turn 1 if need be against rougher matchups that aggro me down is always helpful.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I've been testing this deck a little bit too, and sometimes tapping out on turn 2 is a little bit rough, so I definitely can see where you're coming from with that. So then we have 3 Radar, 4 Super Combos, 2 Crisis Crushers. So a lot of lists right now aren't maining this card, they're just sideboarding it. So what made you want to mainboard Crisis Crusher?
I knew that going into this that with the skillless matchups, that going against them game 1, if they get that hand advantage and they're able to aggro me down with that advantage before I can get my Gogeta out, it's just bad. Especially since if I leave a 1-drop Goku on the board, turn 2, they go right into 30Ks and can potentially start swinging Awaken early and then get their double strikes in, which I didn't want. Especially since a lot of these decks are playing multiple double strike cards, and a lot of either Krillins or intensifying Trunkses or Pans. I didn't want those 1-drop swinging at me. So I felt like maining the Crisis Crusher was probably the best, one of the best options I made in my main board. The times I had it were incredible. The times that they were prized in my life were very detrimental.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially these black leaders, they see Gogeta and they'll stick a Dende on turn 1, which is a huge misplay on their part because I always just drop Crisis Crusher, pop it, and then they're forced to try and recycle it with their Vegetas.
Yeah, I love how Shenron players only play like 2 Crisis Crusher, but they always have it because the deck is just so consistent.
Yeah.
And then we have 2 Purunga, 3 Refigure Majesty. So a lot of people I see only play 2 Refigure Majesty. Was 3 like the right number? I mean, I know a lot of people sometimes complain about they don't see it enough. So maybe 3 is the right number. What do you think?
I felt like 3 was the right number for me, especially since with my 3 Dragon Radar and 3 World Peace, it puts it to, once it comes into deck lists that are very big on removal, that I can constantly spam Shenrons to continue my hand advantage, build my board, and I found myself a lot this weekend bringing in my 2-drop Vanillas to swing. So I felt like multiple Shenrons being able to play them, have them engraved for resource management later, was definitely the best way to go about it. I think 4 is way too much, but 2 gives you the chance to brick, and it also gives a chance to get clogged up in life. So the 3rd was definitely needed, I feel. I never saw myself missing it or saw myself thinking it was too much or, man, there's an extra Shenron in my hand. Definitely the best. I feel like it's the best ratio for this current deck right now.
That makes a lot of sense. 3 World Peace, and then the 1 Demi Grow Secret Rare. So this format feels like it's very compressed to like a turn 4 win condition format. So what made you want to include a Demi Grow turn 5 win condition in your deck?
So the reason I wanted the Demi Grow in there is because if I'm able to be aggroed down, my Gogeta win con and my at all cost win con is gone. If I'm at 1 life or 2 life, it kind of just shuts down the deck. So I wanted to have still a big attacker that can continue my advantage without having to take life. I know a lot of people right now are opting more towards the Fu Dark Banisher just because the triple attack aspect of it. But I feel like if it gets to the point in the game where I'm able to play my Demi Grow, it's a bigger advantage towards me. Because if I were to stick with the Fu, if I commit to the Fu, that turns off any options of me using my Shenron effect to give Gogeta at all costs my ultimate, which would be the same with Demi Grow. But with Demi Grow, I'm actually ripping cards out of their hand and can potentially swing with 1 big triple strike. Plus the extra 15k combo power is it's hard to pass up in the main.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Then we have 3 Bean, 2 Super Saiyan Vegeta, 2 Super Saiyan Goku, 3 at all costs, and 3 yellow vanilla Goku as like your Goku Vegeta lineup. So I'm kind of curious, why even play the vanilla Vegeta and not just like 4 at all costs?
So I felt like the vanilla Vegetas were a good option as far as summoning them from grave. Like I said, with the Shenrons, I did that a lot this weekend because I mained the 2 Purungas, which one of the big things was clearing boards, world piecing in a Shenron, grabbing a 2-drop, and then swinging on their remaining battle card that's tapped. And I felt like having that Vegeta as an extra swinger and fusion piece just kind of helped my ratios out. Honestly, I could have played the 4th at all cost and just one of the regular Vegetas. It just happened to be 3 at all costs was what I needed.
Gotcha.
Personally.
Not a problem.
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
And then as far as the Gokus go, I don't really feel like there's a great 20k option right now. That wouldn't necessarily, I know there's the negate one that you can play, but I feel like that just ends up losing the game from tapping out. So I felt like the vanillas, especially since one could be a yellow, was just definitely the better option for me.
Yeah, I can see that. It's pretty interesting how a lot of these decks are playing vanillas that obviously aren't skillless, but they're still really, really powerful. I mean, a 2-drop for 20k, like you said, is really good for just beating over other battle cards. We have 4 Objection, we have the Gogeta win con, and then Flying Nimbus. So that looks like it's your only negate in the deck. So a lot of lists I see play Power Burst or they play Whis Coercion. So what made you want to go with just 3 Flying Nimbus, and did it work out well enough for you?
The 3 Flying Nimbus I felt was all I really needed. With the 3 Beans and the 4 Objections, I never saw myself in a position where I was worried about dying before my win con was able to go off without actually keeping the Nimbuses in my hand. I never felt myself man, I wish I had something else to use. The 3 Nimbus just worked out for the list. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room with Shenron Gogeta since you have to dedicate pretty much half the deck to extra cards and half the deck to battle cards just to get Gogeta safely out and swinging for game. So I definitely think the Nimbuses, especially since they potentially can stop an entire turn if they're just swinging with their leader. And I feel like the deck has enough 0.05Ks to out-combo the next couple swings or manage my life enough that where if I have to take one, it's not going to be detrimental to my win con.
Gotcha. And then how did Mutaito perform for you all weekend?
Mutaito was great when it needed to be. I found myself being very hesitant if I needed the yellow energy to charge it. And it's a card that when I played with in Richmond with Skillless, that I was very, very protective over that card, even though it not necessarily should be, because that pesky little part in the auto that says if they're more than their energy. So with this event, I was going into it knowing more how to use the card was very helpful. So getting into the Toa matchup, since they're usually only at 4 or 5 energy when they go into their big Mira, getting that rested, even though they're ripping my hand, was always great. Every time my round 6 opponent would go right into their big Mira, I'd have the Mutaido ready just to rest it. They neg 3 cards out of my hand, but I'm Shenron Gogeta, so I already have the hand advantage in that sense, and I have enough copies of the main cards in my deck that if I missed one, it's not the end of the world. And then playing against Eric Goodwin when he was playing Skillless as well, when he drops down his Demi Grow, just Mutaidoing that just kind of seals the game at that point.
Yeah, Mutaido to me feels a lot better because of Killing Zone and Battering Laser being gone. It just feels like a card that actually does something now, which, I mean, it did stuff before too, but it feels really good to play this card in my opinion, especially like you said, against like other Demi Grow secret rares. I think it's really, really good. So
Definitely.
We'll go into the sideboard here. So no escapes on Goku. Were you really afraid of like those UI decks?
Honestly, after playing it round 1 at the Richmond Regionals, I was. That deck is extremely aggressive, and they can go into UI as early as turn 2. And even when I played a Mutaido on the UI, they're still have so many more swings, being able to keep consistently bouncing their 4-drop back to their hand. It just didn't seem like something that was worth looking over, especially since Shugesh is gone, since the ban list is in effect. I feel like it kind of takes over the Cronoa spot, because not only that, we have to worry about the 1-drop Gokus and Vegetas for, the Red Gogeta and Ramp Geta, and then also once October comes, that deck will get some more support. And especially since UI wouldn't have to bounce my cards either playing it, I feel like it was also a good option.
Gotcha. And then we have the Supreme Kai for a little bit more aggro hate, and then Deadly Defender. What did you want the Deadly Defender in against?
So this was more so for those matchups that swing at you a lot, but it's very low to the ground. So for instance, the Broly Height of Mastery builds, and these Demi Grow decks that are the mono black Demi Grow decks that are coming around. Anything that's relying on storming you down with 15k swings, I felt like it was a good option to bring in, just because it's barrier, so they can't easily get rid of it. And if I slap a bean on it, it's very hard for them to get over. It did come in clutch on my round 4 opponent, which was Amani Edwards playing Red Skillless, where his swings were all with his intensifying Trunks very early. So getting this card out made it so that he really had to change his way of playing, because if he didn't deal with this threat, there was no way of him getting to my life. And it also came in clutch in my top 4 match, or my match to see who got 3rd and 4th against Chesko, who was playing his mono black Demi Grow deck. Sticking this guy on the board makes it so that he has to aggressively combo his swings onto my Deadly Defender, and if I had the combo power, then his turn was pretty much mitigated, and I'm able to go into my win con the next turn.
Gotcha.
And it comes out on 3, and it's a quick free world peace target. On your turn, it's a 20k beater, so it's not nothing to look over for sure.
Yeah, like you said before, like Purunga getting rid of your opponent's board and then like punching over their last rest mode card, that seems pretty solid.
Purunga was definitely the MVP this weekend, for sure. If there's one card in this deck that put in the most work, it was Purunga, especially against Eric Goodwin's yellow Skillless deck. Just sticking 2 of these on board, just the amount of draw, and if I was ever scared of what he was setting up with his blockers, I would just send them all back in their deck and go right into Gogeta for the win.
Yeah, in terms of like setup cards for Gogeta 7, I feel like Purunga is probably the strongest card in the deck next to Gogeta 7. And then going on with the side deck, we have Tien and Fu the Dark Banisher. It looks like that's for like the Janemba matchup. And then Mafuba. What did you want Mafuba in against specifically?
Fubo was for, since Bad Ring's gone, there's nothing in the deck really to deal with Victory Strike, especially Broly Victory Strike. If I Mortado them, and if I set up the energy like I want to, I'm going to pass on my turn 5 or 6 with my objections up. They're going to use their Height of Mastery to rest all my yellow energy. If I still have my blue energy, they don't have the Bad Ring and Bad Ring laser to get rid of my Mafuba once they swing with their Victory Strike. So that was kind of my thinking on that.
Gotcha. And then Gogeta 5 is a card that I see in a lot of main decks for Shenjita. How come you decided to side deck it instead of main deck it?
As you can see, I strictly went for plain and simple Gogeta as my go-to. Sometimes the 5 drops just kind of get cloggy, especially having another 1K combo piece or one drop 10K combo piece.
Right.
I felt like it was just a little much, and the only matchup I can really see myself using it in was Trader Frieza, just because getting their Clan of Terrors back in their deck so they can't reanimate them was probably the only reason I even put that card in my side deck.
Gotcha. And then we have the third Mutaito, and then finally the one Godstrike Beerus. Now I love this card as a one-of side deck option. How did it perform for you throughout the weekend?
Honestly, I played against no Shenron Gogeta, so I never found myself actually needing it. So it pretty much stayed in the side, but I definitely see its worth. In my skillless decks, I always main the 1. So keeping it inside was definitely a nice security blanket to know that if I were able to draw into this card, it could potentially save me from losing the game.
Fair enough. Yeah, I definitely think it's a great security blanket against the right matchups, and I think it's gonna be very good going forward in set 7 as well. So Justin, thanks for talking with me about the deck, man. Any final shout outs or anything you want to mention before we wrap the video up?
Just quick shout out to the DMV area. We came to Otakon, we all repped it pretty hard. My team, Absolute Units, we came this weekend, didn't have a great showing at the Team Wars, but was able to take home the invite for Nats. Thanks to you for having me on the channel, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Justin, congratulations again, and we'll see you guys next time.